You're on.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Chacha and Mo Show. This is our first virtual episode and the second episode of the Chacha and Mo comeback.
Yeah. I just realized I need to set this up as a split screen. Otherwise, I'm just a little box and you're a giant box.
I have it on split screen right now for me.
But if it records what I have on my screen.
Oh,
Do you know how I can switch it?
I'm not sure. I don't really use Zoom.
Yeah. Let me find
On
this.
mine, there's a thing at the top right, and you can like change it to it says like view, and then you can change the settings there. But I don't know how it is on phone.
Whiteboard apps, reactions, meeting settings, security, background, and effects. We might just have to do it like this. Hold on.
I think we should try Discord for our next one. The
Okay.
audio and video translates way better as well. Like it's almost like one to one. And it's pretty easy to record on.
All right, we're just gonna do it like this.
Okay.
All right. Go.
Should I do it again? Okay.
It's fascinating because this whole thing with technology is very like on brand for us and our show and figuring stuff out. So yeah, we're using Zoom and it takes two.
Yep. Okay. Welcome back to the Chacha and Mo Show. This is our first virtual episode and the second episode of the Chacha and Mo comeback.
Yay!
Yay. Today we're going to be talking about the pandemic.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, and I've been thinking about my answer too, of sort of what was the best and what was the worst. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start?
Yeah. I think the best thing, I mean, and these are kind of macro things, is that it sounds harsh, but I eliminated a lot of people from my life that I wasn't seeing and I realized I didn't want to see anymore, for various reasons. And it does sound harsh, but there are toxic people out there who drain us, and it was just a realization of like who's important and what's important, and you got to think about what you were going to spend your time on, which was very different. So for me, my lifestyle has up until now been one way, and it involved going out almost every night. And now I hardly ever go out. And I like it that way. I like being with my husband, and I like that there's just more time. And that goes obviously for working remotely as well. But I had already started doing that before the pandemic. So that was great because I had an advantage, because it does taking, some getting used to working remotely for sure. And the worst part of all, I think, had to do with my parents and just being so scared for them and being so careful myself the entire time, because it wasn't worth it. I never went without a mask. I tested all the time. I mean, it was always, always, always there. And then when I finally got it, 2 years in, I felt like a failure. I felt so guilty and dirty and I felt ruined. And I had what I thought was long COVID because I couldn't get better. My body just ached all the time. And the good news is that I went to the doctor and she said my vitamin D was really low. I started taking vitamin D every day and it went away. And I am so lucky, because I know so many people who have horror stories about getting long COVID, and it is life-changing for the worse. And that didn't happen to me. How about you?
Yeah, I had kind of some similar stuff, and I think that was kind of because we were in the same place as well at the same time. I think it kind of flipped everything for me. Like all of the stuff that I was used to having, like being the main part of my life, like kind of flipped to all the stuff that was kind of a secondary part. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Hmm.
I was spending a lot more time on, things that one of the good things is I was spending more time on things I was interested in that were like kind of outside of school.
Yeah.
Because it was almost like I wasn't even really having school at that point because, we
Yeah.
would log on every day, have a little online lesson, which never really worked out. There was always a problem every single time. Um, and then, the rest of the time we would be stuck at home. So you'd have to find something to do. And that did give me a lot of time to learn a lot more stuff about some of the things I was interested in. Um, it gave me
Like,
time to connect with some of my friends.
what did you?
Um, I was learning some mostly like technology kind of based things.
Yeah.
Um, I was learning more about like coding, making videos, animating, editing, Photoshop. I was just learning all the kind of like little online skills I wanted to be able to learn that I just wasn't really having a lot of time to work on. And that just became like all the time I had, you know what I mean?
Great.
So
Chacha and
that was
Moshe will be better
interesting.
for it for sure.
Yeah.
Look out for
Yeah.
special effects, everyone.
Right.
Remember we used to do those in the beginning? We did a lot of effects.
Yeah, we used to throw stuff up every now and then, just put a little effect here and there.
Yeah. It was very 2017. Anyway, so you feel good about the skills that you learned and that you use your time wisely for that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a really good one. And I'm sorry to hear about school because I try to imagine what it would be like, if my first two high school years were like yours. And it's almost hard to really truly imagine to have all the social aspects of school removed. Wow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It was interesting for sure. I think another kind of weird takeaway from it was that we all, I think for the first long part of it, just kept thinking it was going to go away at any minute. When it
right.
first started,
Yep,
especially with people my age, we heard, 2 weeks off and then we'll be coming back.
totally. It was
And
like
it
bit.
just kept going on and on and on. And that was
Yeah.
kind of one of the big negatives of it. On the last day of school, which was March 13th, engraved in everyone's mind now, on the very last day, I remember I went with my friends and we hung out after school for a bit. And we were just kind of talking about like, oh man, like, we get 2 weeks off. Like, what are we going to do when we get back? Just no one knew at the time. It was just
Right.
completely out of our minds. And that was the last time I even got to see any of them because after that I moved before I got to go back to school and I had no idea that'd be the last time, so that
Wow.
kind of sucked, but
Wow.
yeah.
Shout out to any of those friends who are watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where you developed the biggest following for this podcast.
Right.
But yeah, I remember that week too. Believe it or not, I was supposed to get married that weekend, um, originally. And I also, the other thing that I remember about that week is that I was going to Adelanto, the detention center, the ICE detention center, to visit people who were there. And man, oh man, I mean, I haven't done that since. To go into a place like that and just, it was such a risk. And it just makes me sad because we were visiting people who were lonely then. Imagine how lonely they were during the pandemic. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
horrible, horrible. So I miss that. I definitely do miss that. Um, just not even just taking for granted that you can go places.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting for the first while too because I started getting to see my dad a lot more and we would go out every single weekend and that was at least something that was good to look forward to, because besides
Nice.
that I was stuck in the house all day every day for the whole week, but when the weekend came we'd be able to go to a park and go get some food, go hang out, and that definitely held me together for the duration of the pandemic and that was good to have. And it was also interesting that I feel like in some ways I got closer to a lot of people as well, just because, we didn't have much else to do besides kind of talk to each other, even if it was virtually. So some good came out of that as well. I got to strengthen some friendships and some of them just kind of went away, but it was an interesting time.
Yeah, what do you think? I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of mental health aspects too. Like what affects what well, just what kinds of things did you and your friends talk about?
Yeah, weirdly, we just kind of talked about the same kind of things that we would have talked about in person, you know? Um, we
Hmm,
didn't really end up talking too much about the pandemic. It was, something that came up, but then for almost the entire time, we were all kind of on the page that, we'd be out of it in 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever it might be.
wow.
And I think it was a long time before people started to kind of realize that we were probably in it for the long run, and it'd be like at least another year before things started to die down. Um, but we just kind of talked about, same kind of things we normally would, which was, just random things, um, current events, stuff coming up, games, movies, whatever. Um, that was interesting. And there was all sorts of little ways you could communicate with people that kind of popped up from the pandemic as well. There was an app called House Party where you went on it with your friends, and there was little games and stuff you could do, and that was a thing for a little bit. So
Nice.
it was
Okay.
fun to see those kind of things.
That house party. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Still do that or
No, I think it died pretty hard. It died pretty quick.
mhm. Yeah, interesting. What is the best thing about no longer being in the pandemic?
Definitely the social aspect, just being
Mm,
able to communicate with people in person. It's a very big difference, especially like, when you're stuck communicating with people like virtually or kind of long distance for the majority of the time. I think most people just kind of got used to it pretty quick and didn't even really see like how much it was like a really big difference until the pandemic kind of ended and everyone went back, and it was like, it was kind of shocking, like as everyone was so used to not being able to communicate in person for the whole time, and then to be able to go back to it was a good difference, and it was a big difference for sure.
was it shocking to you or how was it to see? Because because at your age 2 years makes a huge difference. Everybody must have looked so different.
Well, it was different for me because when the pandemic started, I was in California, and
Mm,
when it kind of ended, when I went back to school, I was back here in Atlanta. So I
mm,
wasn't going to see the same people I would have, seen in
right.
California. I was just seeing
Yeah.
a whole different group
Mm,
anyways, which
mhm.
I think might have actually made things easier in some ways because it was almost like going to a new school. Like everything was just kind of brand new anyways, not just because of the pandemic. So I think the change was maybe a little easier because of that. And I had switched schools a couple times before already, so I was used to the change in environment kind of aspect of it.
Hmm.
So it wasn't too bad, but it was just weird. It was hard to get used to for a while.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And did your sleeping habits change?
Oh yeah. I was up pretty late and sleeping in pretty hard for most of the pandemic because there was no really sense of schedule revolving like around actual time because everything was
Right.
just, you're stuck at home. So didn't really matter if the sun was up or down. Yeah, that was interesting.
Were your
Um,
live though, or you just
say that
watch?
again.
What your classes, when you had class, was it live? Was it in real time, or did you watch videos?
So I don't remember like exactly how it was because it's been quite a while now, but from what I remember, we had like a couple live classes for the days.
Mhm.
And it was kind of split up how my classes are now, where we had like like an A day and then a B day,
Okay.
and they split the classes between those days. And as far as I remember, there was like a live lesson for maybe like one or two of the classes per day, and then besides that, all the work was just virtual. You just did it online and turned it in. Um, which was not a great system for sure, but I think no one really knew what to do because it was just out of the blue. No one knew how to set things up. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, ramble for a long time because
yeah,
it, like I said, at first everything was temporary anyways. It was just like, okay, we're going through something really weird. Like I can compare it to right after September 11th. September 12th, nobody knew what to do with themselves, where to go, what to do. It was just so big and so incomprehensible. What do you think when we look back at this time? I'm interested sociologically and just in terms of the way that we're moving forward from this, the way that it's playing, the role that it has played and will probably continue to play. Was this would you consider this a major event of your life?
Yeah, definitely. I think it also had a bigger impact because of the age I was when it happened.
Mhm.
And I've heard a lot of people kind of say around my age group that our minds kind of still feel stuck, like from when they were in the pandemic. And I think that's pretty true for a lot of people. Um, I know a lot of the thing that's come up a lot is that people still feel like they're kind of stuck mentally at the age that they were when the pandemic started. Not in like the sense of like their maturity, but like,
Yeah,
when the pandemic started, I was 13 and I'm going to be turning 17 in two
my God,
months.
those are big.
And
Yeah,
it
yeah,
does not feel like it was like as much
yeah,
of a gap at all. It feels like it was just, a couple months ago when I was 13 and the pandemic started. And that was a pretty weird thing to look back on.
yeah, yeah. There's a whole dimension of experiences that you didn't have as part of
Yeah.
those. And I,
How about for you?
hey, I'm sorry, but I don't know. Some of the stuff really is positive. It really is better. Um, so I mean, I'm glad we're on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I think, I I don't know, man. I think another just weird thing for me is about eating out. Because, we didn't do that, for 3 years practically.
Yeah.
And missing that, and now not really doing it half as much. Because I don't have the habit, and it's probably not a good one. So
Hmm.
that's definitely something that has lasted. What's something that's lasted for you?
I think a lot of the school stuff has persisted even past the pandemic. A lot of the ways that they started doing things have kind of translated over to now. Um, Pretty much everything now in our schools is virtual, even
Oh,
though, we're going to school in person, but all their work is online. Everyone uses their laptops for all of the work. There's hardly any more like paper assignments.
so every
Um,
laptop. That's a
Everything's virtual now. I think they just kind of got used to the system of being able to post everything and keep it in one place. And I'm sure that was easier in a lot of ways for the teachers. So they just kept on doing it that way, which it's hard to tell if that was good or bad, because they both have their ups and downs. But it's interesting to see if you like really step back and look at it, like how much of the pandemic things that started from the pandemic just translated over, it's still going on now.
mm,
Even like you were talking about with eating out, every
hmm
restaurant just has a QR code now instead of a menu. They hardly ever
yeah,
give you menus anymore.
yep. That's a perfect example. Yeah, some
Yeah.
things are never going to go back.
And
Yeah,
people don't even really, think twice about it now because it's just been so kind of ingrained into like the routine of things.
I think another weirdly good thing about the pandemic is I didn't get sick, other than getting COVID in the end. But
Yeah.
I certainly didn't have my usual colds and flus and stuff. And I still, when I flew out to see you, I wore a mask on the plane, and it definitely is a pain in the ass, especially when you wear glasses and they get fogged. But on the other hand, I just feel like it's common sense,
Yeah.
like expose yourself to germs and you're going to get sick. So I've already had a couple of really bad colds since I stopped wearing a mask every day.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it sort of feels like a lesson I needed to learn. Um, but I wanted to ask you a question about school and the lap. Does everybody have a laptop, or are they issued to you?
Yeah, so the school, the one I go to, they issue everyone a laptop. It's a little Chromebook, and they handed them out to everybody at the very start of the year. And it was kind of set up so it just works for school stuff. You log into like your school account for it,
Okay.
and then you just get pretty much just a browser.
Mm.
And yeah, that's literally it. You just get the Chrome browser.
Look up on the browser.
Yeah, you would just sign into your school account, and then they have everything blocked pretty much besides the
Yeah.
Google Classroom and your documents and whatever, so you can type things up.
Ugh,
Um,
boring.
I use my personal laptop. I just bring it to school and use that because I find it much easier to use.
Mm.
There's a lot of people at our school who still do that, but it's an interesting system. It's kind of
Mm.
weird, but I know
So
some
everyone
people
looking,
definitely prefer
just
it.
sitting there looking at their screen.
I mean, it depends what class you get. Some of the teachers, they're still like, they're hardcore about they want to do everything on paper and teach a real lesson on the, in front of the
Mhm.
class, which I kind of prefer. But most of them nowadays, you post the work on the Google Class, you log in, you do it. You're just on your computer for pretty much the whole time, which, yeah, not the best.
Well, that's one of the things that I cannot wrap my mind around, which is having access in that way to your teachers, being able to email your teacher,
Yeah,
um, the accessibility. I mean, I think, it was a handful of times my entire, K through 12 where I would have a meeting with the teacher, have one-on-one time. Um, I don't know if you consider emailing one-on-one, but you know what I mean, like
yeah,
the readability and the communication, um, especially in college, I think is really changing the experience from what we had. So
yeah.
yeah.
The one kind of benefit I've noticed from the work being all virtual too is that it's a lot easier if you end up like missing something or if you miss like some school. And I just noticed that now because I missed the whole, first week and a half pretty much of school. But when I went to all my teachers, pretty much all of them were just like, yeah, as long as you're in the, the virtual class we set up, you can just go and every single thing is posted there and you can just, it's really easy to keep up with stuff no matter like where you are if you missed a lot of school. And that's been an upside for sure. It's way easier than having to go through and pick out every single paper assignment and keep them track in order. So
Do you still have
yeah.
attendance at school?
Sorry.
You have attendance at school?
Yeah, we still do attendance, but even the attendance is all virtual too. And
Mm-hmm.
it's logged
Right.
virtually, they take it virtually. And yeah.
Yeah. I would think there might be a temptation to put off school and then do it all at once or something if you're not managing it correctly.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. Well, Chacha's power is low on my phone. I'm doing this from a phone. Um, so this is the conclusion of our Zoom and experiment. And next time we'll see you on, what is it?
The 20th.
Oh no, the program that you were saying we should use.
Oh, I think next time we're gonna try Discord and see how
This
that works.
doesn't sound very friendly, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
So
the quality will translate a bit better.
so this do you have any closing words?
Um, can't think of anything. Use
Hmm.
hand sanitizer. Wash your hands a lot.
Another good thing to keep in mind from the pandemic. Yeah, so we're going to call this episode What Was So Great About the Pandemic?
Yeah,
Anyway. All right. Love you, kiddo.
love you too.
All right.
Okay.